Hi, everyone. My name is Jim Malone. I'm a senior contributing editor for CIO Marketing Services, and we're delighted to welcome you to this webinar from NHTSA. In this session, you'll hear from a panel of expert practitioners on the state of ITAM. Our panelists will tackle key ITAM considerations, including data quality and sharing across teams, automation and artificial intelligence, security and risk management, and financial control and lifecycle planning. We've got a great session planned. Now, before I pass the mic to our moderator, Phil Newmoyer, who's a partner at Acacia Advisors, a quick housekeeping tip to help you really get the most out of this session. And that is check out the resources list on your player. There you'll find useful, actionable assets that you can download to do a deep dive on this topic. You can even download a copy of the IDC Spotlight report that our panelists will discuss. You'll also discover how to get in touch with our sponsor, NHTSA. And with that, I'll pass the mic to our moderator, Phil Newmoyer. Phil, over to you.
Thank you, Jim, very much. And thank you for everyone joining today and our esteemed panel. We've got a topic that's near and dear to me as a CIO of many years. Our topic today is, IT asset management, often referred to as ITAM. And particularly what we're going to talk about with this great panel today is some IDC research and how data within the ITAM arena is foundational to some of the most critical things that technology leaders face today. And that's really what we're going to dive into as it relates to AI, automation, security. Reliable data today is threaded through every capability of service delivery of IT to companies and organizations everywhere. Financial control, operations are more complex. You need to be able to rely on clean, trusted data to serve your business customers internally, but your trading partners and external customers as well. And what we're going to talk about today is operating smarter with IT operations, drive cost management, and really drive high performance with data at the center and core of ITAM capabilities across your IT organization. And why does all this matter? So the IDC, just some quick points before we jump in with the panel. The IDC has found some, what we think are pretty startling things, that IT data across operations, security, service, finance, procurement, across the entire enterprise is really become completely dependent upon driving asset data across the company, and that's where to drive proper cybersecurity, AI performance. AI relies on data not only across your integration layers and data, but an organization can only manage what they see. And IT assets, whether they're hardware, software, traverse the entire business, not only under IT management, but as well as across the business with SaaS platforms of software that's purchased by the business. And what the IDC research has found is that a very low number, 33% of organizations, they report that they need more reliable data to automate their processes. And the AI initiatives that they're driving are really facing a headwind when they don't have the data that they need. And at its core is the ability to see your technology assets and investments across the company. And that's where ITAM becomes really critical. And there are many solutions that are out there for ITAM, and there are many companies that are falling short of what they need to do. And they're asking themselves a question: how can we attack this differently to get better results? And that's what we're going to talk about with this panel today. So let's jump in. And what I'd like to say also is NHTSA is our great sponsor of this webinar today, and they're operating across many, many different customers. And we're going to talk about that with, over 1,500 connectors. They're able to, for their clients, connect into the entire enterprise and provide that visibility, to provide accuracy that's near 100%. It's something that's going to be really important as we talk about that today. Our objectives of this discussion, we're going to talk about how we can achieve accurate data to drive the AI, how we can drive cybersecurity performance in an age when the data is critical to doing so. Look at finance-friendly alternatives to managing this, and as well as looking at steps we can do to improve that data quality. So let's just jump in here with the panel. Let's start with everyone. I'd like to open this up, just for a quick introduction for just each of you go around and just talk about what was the most important decision that you were not able to make by not having the trustworthy data in your enterprise. Vishal, why don't we start with you and give a quick introduction about your background?
Thank you, Phil. Great insights we're sharing from the IDC side. Loved it. And so my background is, I've been in technology for 30 years. I'm, currently the CIO CTO at Lexmark, but before that, I've also been a C-level CTO at Unisys, and part of that, SVP of Engineering and Products at Symantec, and part of that, executive at Cisco. And so I think what all those experiences have shaped me to see is that all of these great initiatives that we have today, whether it's IT, whether it's compliance, whether it's cost management, whether it's security or AI, right? These days, AI is really the buzzword. All of this is really dependent on data as the central fabric, and not just data, clean data. And this is why for your asset, if your data is not clean, it's a real problem and a real opportunity. And so to your specific question, if I think about security and patch management, if I do not know how many assets I do even have, what are the operating systems, how am I going to patch it? We have seen that real time by not having that data at one point and having that data accurate at the other point, and seeing what a massive difference just on that area alone, having a clean data can make.
Thank you. That's spot on. Amy, I know that you're in the midst of a long journey with making investments and improving your environment on visibility of your enterprise across all the software hardware assets. So what led you to that? How did you get there that you said, this is just unacceptable, we need to make these investments?
Thanks, Phil. Quick intro on me as well. Like Vishal, I've been in the tech industry for about 30 years as well, across healthcare and fintech. Now, in my role as VP of technology for a logistics company, we use a lot of mobile devices in the field, right? So we track our assets. We do that. We have ways to get to the data we have, but it's not real time. And we're a logistics company moving people, transporting people, and it's really important that when we have mobile devices to our with our team on the road, that we know where those devices are. Are our assets deployed where we think they're deployed? And are they going the direction we need them to safely take care of our transportation needs? So, we are really excited to be involved with our NHTSA initiative and launching really real time visibility and understanding of where these are at any moment.
Yeah, that's great. Robert, as the leader of NHTSA, what are you seeing, from your customers in terms of a leading reason why they say, it's time, we need to do this?
Yeah, first off, Phil, thank you, and Jim, thank you for walking us through this event today. And I feel honored to have two colleagues that I've known for a long time, and Vishal and Amy, very very much thought leaders throughout my career that I've had the ability to be exposed to and work with. Look, I think the number one thing I hear from customers right now is that high fidelity data hygiene is critical right now to the ability to add velocity in terms of capability, and I think ultimately the capacity at which you can do it, whether it's AI or whether it's just building out integration, relies on complete visibility of all of the information in your environment. For us in particular, it's around digital assets. But I think ultimately, the one thing organizations look for again and again is they need to be able to show a level of competency to their leadership in their organization. And, as they do that, they've got to constantly be looking back at um, reliable data. And if you can't produce that reliable data, then all of the outcomes that you're going to look for in your organization are going to be flawed. And so that's constantly what I'm hearing from our customers is they need that high level 98, 99% accuracy of data so that they can really drive better performance and more alignment into the actual metrics that are driving the success of their business.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Every viewer that we have out there for this is going to be saying, we all have data issues, every company, right? What are some practical things that we're learning and doing and seeing our customer community do? Vishal, in terms of, what you're doing to attack the problem, related to some of the breakdowns between IT, security, and finance, and addressing it. Because I think that's really what people want to know is, what can I do differently to improve this? Because data issues that affect the business have been around forever, and new technologies are coming along to address it and create better visibility. What are you doing specifically to begin to attack that?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And, as you know, Phil, one of the holy grails in IT asset management, has really been around how do you really get an accurate CMDB, right? And that's something that the industry has been trying to do for some time, right? At Semantic, we used to have a product in that area as well, and I knew how hard it was. And so in my current role, not as a creator of the tool, but as a user of the tools, right? We have tried to see, what problems can get addressed when you have accurate CMDB. And I'll give you a very specific example. When we were doing our patching rates for Windows were very good. They were sort of in the 90s, but for Macs, even after we bought tools like Jamf and others, they just refused to move beyond 70. And we could not, we took help from Apple, we worked with Jamf, and we just could not figure out what do you do. And then what we realized is, you know, our CMDB is actually the problem because we don't know all the, because a lot of those Apple devices were what people were bringing from home. Because we don't know all the Apple devices that were there, we could not really patch them. So we could see the patch rate was low, but we could not really get an accurate count of what was connected when, of what version and all. And so when we actually invested, in a tool that could create that accuracy, our patch rates for Mac were finally able to go from that 70% to 90+%. And after we struggled on that thing, the year before. And so we have seen real time how this can help. Now you'd say, okay, what's the big deal with patching? Patching is not just something you present to the board, right, and say, okay, this is my patch rate, right? It's the patching forms the essence of security fundamentals, because you cannot, that's the first way you can get breached if you have that. The other bit that happens is when you have good data from an asset perspective, then not only can you patch those machines, you could also make sure that the certificates are getting renewed on those machines as well, which will also increase your, security, makes your security posture better. And so we have seen real time how these things are both a hard problem, and once you solve them, actually have very significant and measurable outcomes.
Yeah, that is something that I certainly can relate to in great deal. I've been in more than a few audit committee meetings talking about when are we going to have our servers updated and patched in accordance with audit requirements, and that can be a real issue from a SOX perspective for sure. Amy, as you continue to build out your platforms and capabilities with the data, what are you looking to kind of set the standard for data quality to be able to, I assume, and share with us a little bit about what you're doing with automation and how improved data quality is going to drive that better automation for you?
Right today, our standard is really just making sure we truly understand all the assets that we're managing and that they are, if we say we have a lot of assets that sit on a shelf and then get pulled into deployment. So wanting to understand, are they where we think they are? As far as automation, integration with our service desk, so that when a user is having an issue, right? We can eliminate one level of exchange between the user and the service desk. When we have an issue, they immediately know which device we're on and what they need to troubleshoot for us. So that's really our next level, is that device detection for service level support, so that we improve our customer satisfaction with resolving their issues. Beyond that, I'd say that you know th- the software subscription management, being able to understand and better manage licensing to devices that's deployed. I think we're going to find so much savings with being able to really evaluate the subscriptions that we have, and are we using them, and where can we pull things back, because they're not really being used by the users. So to me, if we're able to accomplish all of that this year, then that's what success looks like, for at least the next, quarter, is having that baseline.
Yeah, and particularly the area of the SaaS, it is something that I'm hearing from so many companies, that so many SaaS applications have been purchased over the years that are not under management or visibility. And to that end, Robert, I know I am a big follower of yours on LinkedIn, and I see you out and about talking with so many of the technology executives, and just curious as to what you're hearing, from them as it relates to the importance of the data accuracy and driving automation. Um, what kind of trends and or what are you hearing from the experts?
Yeah, it was first off, I'm only as good on LinkedIn as Sarah can educate me. So, I'm learning from
Yeah,
the best there. But
we all are.
yeah, yeah. Uh, Listen, I think when you talk about data hygiene in a CMDB environment or a CASM environment, I think the first thing people really look at is, and this, I got this education from a CIO at a pretty significant credit union. And he basically told me, he says, when I'm using a CMDB, I'm really limited to my operationally active devices. And, coming from the cybersecurity world, Michelle will tell you, we worked together at Symantec, and, my whole life was around talking about operationally active devices. But I think what I'm learning in the asset management realm is that there's an entirety across a life cycle of devices and software that are found in forecasting, in procurement, in the reseller, and from manufacturing, the way it gets stored or provisioned, and the way it gets deployed, all the way out to the backside, and understanding how do we retire hardware, how do we retire software, how do we make sure that our coverage gaps map our license management, and tie that all the way back into final depreciation. And what I'm learning more and more every day from really incredible thought leaders like the two we have today is that if you don't understand that entirety, and you don't have a way of capturing and aggregating that information and normalizing it and getting rid of the duplication, uh, then you really can't measure the effectiveness it has on your environment, and you can't control costs. And you're probably in a situation where you can't address your audit readiness or your regulatory compliance. And I think for us, where we focus every day is continuing to improve upon that differentiation for us in the market. We built our data model on an object-based, asset-centric model. And when you look at a CMDB or a CASM, it's ticket-centric. And inherently, a ticket-centric model is going to have redundancies, and it's going to have false information in there, and it's going to have errors. And that's why I think commonly in the market, you'll hear people say the same thing that Vishal said earlier. It's very difficult to trust the data inside of a CMDB model or a CASM model, and to go put more money on top of that in AI or in other function, it just seems counterintuitive. And so I think what I hear most often is people are looking at ways to really enhance the capability and the accuracy of that data.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a perfect segue, actually. So, in keeping with that, Vishal, it's making me think about, those moments when you have to update your board, when they want answers on the highest level things that says, what are we doing with AI? Is it improving our business? What are the specific initiatives we're doing? And you're sitting there and you're wondering, geez, the strategy is perfect, but how do we execute this with all the details behind it? And the data quality is always at the root of missed expectations, as I've always called it. And you have to make those investments. And back to our one of our objectives for this session today is, what are you doing to close those gaps? Because the expectations for AI-driven performance improvement, now specific outcomes and targets, as well as cyber protections, because the threats are increasing in risk, right? Because of the advanced technologies. So what are some of those things you're doing to close that gap to continue to meet the expectations on the business performance?
Yeah, no, great question, Phil. And as Rob was saying, this is a difficult problem to solve, but it is an important problem because when you solve the asset data quality issue, then there are two types of benefits that you will see. We talked about security, so I'm not going to touch security, but I'll talk about other things. One type of benefit, as you're alluding to, is in the world of AI. We have gone from maybe 3 years back, 4 machine learning models in production, maybe 2 AI use cases, to almost 100 machine learning models in production, a dozen agentic AI use cases, all of those things. Now, AI is, whether you do agentic AI, deep learning, any of the types of AI you want to do, or just with LLM, it depends on your data, right? Your data is giving you the competitive advantage. And if that data is not accurate, your advantage is, not only diluted, you may cause your models to hallucinate, which is worse than dilution, because now you're actually saying the wrong things and losing customers and adding cost, right? And so getting this asset data to be accurate with a technology like Umnitsa becomes very critical. And we have seen that real time as, not only the use of AI has gone up so much in our own organization, but we're seeing tangible benefits from AI. So investing in a technology that enables you that clear data, clean data is very critical. I think the other bit of it is, when you want to invest in a technology like AI, the CIOs or CTOs don't always have lots of extra money. And so you have to think about, how do you run your shop more efficiently to even create budget? One of the places where you can create that budget is from things like, what is my existing spend on licenses, software licenses? Now, how am I going to reduce my spend on the software licenses if I don't have clean data on how many endpoints I have, how many servers I have, how many of them are virtual, where are they, what are they getting used for, right? And so what we found was we were able to retire at least 500 E5 licenses for Microsoft itself, because we realized some of those devices uh, was provisioned were really not getting used. We saw no active usage on them for 60 days. And so having that data to be accurate is very helpful from security, in being able to do AI, in being able to even manage your costs better through things like license management. So it's a critical problem to solve.
Yeah, it is. And I would add that I've myself have seen instances where not having that kind of data is also a problem in your ability to defend invoices that come from your software companies that are presuming that you are operating all those licenses, but you have to be able to show that you are not.
Yeah, I
So
think without naming those companies, there are a few companies who like to sue or send you, unexpected surprises, and having that asset being accurate, knowing not only which assets you have, but what software is installed on those assets becomes very critical to fight or rather engage in those kinds of opportunities.
Yeah, exactly. So, Amy, you're in advanced stages of deploying Umitsa, and your capabilities continue to build. What are you putting in place to gain some real-time visibility of the asset landscape?
So a couple of things we're doing. One is we're, GPS and adding GPS to our devices, both our IT devices and some of our physical devices as well in our fleet. And with that, we're getting automation, right, around real-time notifications of what's happening with the device to really improve our driver safety, for example, or our passenger safety as well. So, really excited about the workflows that we're able to build that give us these automated notifications.
Is AI threaded to any of that?
Not yet. I would love to have it threaded through that, but, we have to crawl first,
Yes.
and we are definitely, we're excited to have clean data that we know where everything is at any given moment, and, we'll start basic and then, build upon that, hopefully early 2026.
Yeah, that sounds good. And Rob, that's a perfect segue to jump in here and talk about the ways in which MITS is helping customers like Amy bring advanced technologies like AI into the platform.
Yeah, I think when you think about AI, there's a couple aspects here from a technology perspective. The first is, AI's it's an enabler. It's a way to take a look at data in a different way and make the human behind that more effective, and do it in a way where the speed at which they can respond is quicker. But I also think there's a phase here of where you take AI to improve the overall processes, or to look at things potentially differently than the way you've been looking at them. And I think that's where you start to get into more of the predictability, and some of the ability to leverage what you're getting out of AI from looking at your data differently to drive the business in a different direction. We're looking at things like, how do we do predictive failures? How do we look at data across multiple types of assets and be able to say, holistically, we're seeing these fail at this rate, and where does that map to where you are in your warranties? And how does that map into the way you should refresh? I think we're looking at trying to build predictability around, how do we make sure that as you're going from forecasting to ordering, that there is already a look at what you have in storage. I mean, it's amazing to me how many organizations are moving so fast and growing so fast that they have duplicative purchasing inside their environment, and it's not at the negligence or the inability of people. It's too much information for someone to be able to take and interpret that. And what AI is doing is giving us the ability to look at these things differently. I think what's going to be interesting is to watch the difference between you leveraging AI in your own segmented or multi-tenant environment versus what we're looking at in the future is a community environment of AI. Where do we go from you having your information isolated in your environment to the demands when customers start asking for 24 months from now? Hey, how do I look at where I am performing against the rest of the industry? And I think, just like in cybersecurity years ago, when people said this is becoming a boardroom conversation, look, every organization that I talk to, every CIO and CISO I talk to says their CEO and their board is constantly asking them, what AI initiatives do we have going underway? So there's definitely a boardroom CEO level ask to go engage in AI. I think where we want to be is, we want to be the company that's delivering the responsibility and the capability to say, we're putting controls around the data, we're allowing you to leverage that data, and we're keeping the integrity of that data for your organization to go do these things in a phased approach. and do them in a capacity that aligns with your general counsel and your company's appetite for risk and the use of its information inside of these learning engines. And I think we're doing a pretty good job of it. And I think it's aligning well with what our customers expect from us and what our customers want to see in terms of where we take things around AI and automation, as we're doing for Amy and many of our other customers.
Yeah, that's right. And I agree with you about what they're asking in the boardrooms, and I think that has now moved on to, what am I getting for those investments, right?
Absolutely.
What business value are we generating from these AI investments, so that I know that those dollars are being placed in the right places and we're actually delivering the outcomes.
Yeah, and Phil, maybe just to that point, you saw the study from MIT, right? 95% of the AI projects are not always delivering the business value, right? That's so the success. So I think the point Rob makes is fantastic, which is not only is it a board initiative, right, to do these things, but how do you actually get the value? And you can't get the value if your data is not accurate, right? It's like a circular problem.
Yeah, yeah. Amy, any thoughts on?
Yeah, I was gonna add to that. I think, again, it all goes back to the data, right? To set yourself up for successful AI integration and automation. And you had asked earlier about, what we see in the near future. And I think once we get the data where we want is even just with our compliance reporting, right? AI it can really help administratively if you have the right data to really be able to quickly get to, are you compliant? Are you not? Where are your sensitive spots? Where do you need to do better? So all of that starts with the data. So
Yeah, and we haven't talked about all those good things. I've brought up audit a couple times, but just regulatory compliance
mhm.
is pass fail, and it's unforgiving if you fail.
Hmm.
And data is like everything else is definitely at its core. Let's do a quick pivot here a little bit to another really important topic, and that's security and risk reduction as it relates to all this, because as CIOs, we're expected to manage what ownership and leadership considers reasonable risk for the company. And this topic today obviously goes right at that. Vishal, what are your thoughts on this in terms of how you're managing that at your organization, BitSight Score, other things you're doing?
Sure. So, we talked a little bit about earlier around if for your assets, right, whether your endpoints, whether your cloud, whether your even websites, if you have the right data, you know what version they're at, if there's a certificate, if it's getting expired and you're able to renew it. Um, the way things like BitSight Score or Security Scorecard or any of those things that are public facing work is they essentially evaluate your public facing security risk. And so for us, having this data be clean has been very helpful. And not only doing things like patching or certificate renewals, but doing that for everything that's publicly exposed, whether that be any endpoint, whether that be any server, whether that be the stuff in our cloud, whether that be in the websites. And that has paid us very rich dividend, right? In our industry, we have the highest BitSight score. We have an advanced BitSight score, and it is in the imaging industry. You know, we're over 100 points near our closest competitor, and so that has been fantastic. What that has also done is, when you uh, these days every large enterprise ends up taking cyber insurance. Our cyber insurance premiums actually went down. Usually they go up, in high single digits. And so there's actually a lot of benefit, not just in pleasing your board or in reducing your risk. There's actually financial benefit as well that you get from an operating cost perspective by having these kinds of scores and by having this high insurance premium. Also, what it does is, when you think about compliances, because when you're serving, say, healthcare customers, banking customers, government customers, they want you to be very compliant, right? They want, for example, we focus on SOC 2 compliance for our cloud. We focus on ISO 27001 in general, in terms of saying we're very process centric. By having a discipline of having clean data, focus on detail, focus on process, in the recent when we had these um, when we had these compliance standards, we not only passed these, but we got what are called no observations, which means they did not even have any recommendations, which they typically do, to say how to make things better. They were like, this is so textbook. This is really standing out, right? So kudos to the team for making it happen. But clearly, the accurate data, especially on the asset side, does contribute to a lot of business value, like we discussed.
Yeah, that's really a great example, actually. It goes to, what specific value is being created. And that's actually almost a KPI, right? When your insurance premiums are being lowered, because that doesn't happen every day. And there's a very sophisticated analysis that goes into those evaluations from risk insurers. Amy, how about you? I know you're working on a bunch of things. You're obviously creating better audit trails and compliance reporting, um, and you're tracking the mobile devices in better ways today than you were before. True.
Definitely, definitely. And, our team, I think what we're really doing is creating efficiency and the ability to respond quicker, right? The team over the years has always, tracked things very well, but it's just how they were being tracked. So by digitizing our processes and being able to really then have at our fingertips where our devices were deployed uh, is very important. We are a federal contractor, and we have strict reporting requirements as well as strict security requirements. And this just lets us do it better and faster.
Yeah, exactly. And Rob, what I'm hearing is that some of the great work you and your team are doing is closing what's been a gap for a long time, and that's the assets that have kind of been off the grid, that out of that perimeter of visibility, and bringing that in. I've always said as a CIO, it's like, if I can't see it, I can't manage it. And, it was all about that first step, is getting it under management. And being aligned with auditors in that regard as well, that they agree that it's now under management. So, and cloud has been a big part of that chasm that happened over the years, and now we're bringing it back in. So, talk about how you're helping customers address that gap.
Yeah, I think, first and foremost, it was funny when I first became CEO at UNITSA. All of my colleagues in the industry were like, "Wait a minute, that's not a cybersecurity company." And I said, well, it's interesting you say that, because in the support of the great teams we had at Symantec and at Mandiant, and even going back to my RSA days, when incidents happen, the first people on the ground always have the same first question: what's your inventory look like? What's your landscape look like? What's the telemetry of your environment? And it was always amazing to me, 90% of companies, they can't deliver that. And you really spend a lot of the first few days of engaging in an incident on trying to learn, what does the environment look like? And what I love about UNITSA is, you don't have to question it. We give an amazing view of your entire inventory across hardware and software in your environment, because we just see more than anybody else. And I think what that does is it adds a level of what you can do in security. I talk with people all the time about, imagine if as soon as you saw an incident on a device, you could verify that you procured it, that you deployed it, that you put it in the environment. Or imagine when an asset is coming into your environment remotely, and you have the ability to look at the reputation of that asset based on the security stack that's on it, based on the user that's using it, And based on your ability to correlate that information and tie that with its geolocation and in the location it's coming in on the network, and be able to say, hey, this is a device that the same person uses the same device, it comes in across the same network, and it's accessing the same regions and has the same security stack every time. It gives you a level of trust and minimizes that risk as you go forward. And I think what we're seeing is that, it's clear if you look at CrowdStrike's threat report, you look at the Google threat report that Mandiant does, if you look at Verizon, SentinelOne, any of the top companies out there that are doing incidents, they'll tell you that the attacker has gotten more sophisticated, and they're not just looking at the operationally active devices anymore. They are trying to infiltrate the supply chain. I mean, we've seen an example where an organization received laptops on their loading dock and instantaneously provisioned them and put them into their environment, and no one ever checked to see whether they actually even ordered them. And it turned out they were sent to the company by the attacker, knowing they would put them in their environment, right? Those types of attacks, they are happening. That's real. And having an asset management technology that has high reliability of data and has the ability to look at your entire life cycle, we have to call it the 11 stages of the asset life cycle. It absolutely plays a role in security, and it absolutely plays a role in having a better risk profile in your environment. And I will tell you that I think that's supported by the move that's going on with a lot of the regulatory compliance. You look at NYDFS, they're requiring inventory now. HIPAA is talking about requiring inventory. NIST recommends you know your inventory. PCI wants you to know your inventory. GDPR wants you to know your inventory. I mean, just about any compliance globally right now requires you to understand what does your inventory look like, and to be able to track how you took assets offline and what you did with them, whether you destroyed them, repurposed them. And that's where NHTSA plays a role. And I think we continue to participate there.
Yeah, that's quite an example, Rob. I'm I'm just it just maybe brings back some memories, but it falls under that category of topics we shouldn't debate, right? Like, should I have an absolute inventory from a security perspective alone? It's just something that that Vishal, I was just thinking here, as a CIO, you have massive responsibilities, right? You really, I've always said, you're running a business within a business, because you have to wear so many more hats than just technology. You're running a business that has to perform, deliver, understand expectations, customers, and manage those expectations. Financial is a big part of it as well, because you are managing very big budgets, critical budgets. And you mentioned earlier about creating some value and then reinvesting it in your budget back into the company. And every CIO knows that is really important. One of the things that I've seen is that cloud costs, in recent years, cloud, when it came about, got legs under it. And as many technology trends do, it kind of runs away a little bit. And now the costs, you see companies looking at their cloud costs and what to do about them, because they've become prohibitively expensive in many areas and don't fit, the overall strategy of what you're trying to do. It's an overspend in a lot of ways. And then you have other issues as well with the cloud architectures that are out there and footprint in some companies. So what are you doing? Are you looking, is that something that you're concerned about, and the financial challenges that represents?
Yeah, 100%, Phil. I do want to kind of connect before I answer that question with the incident Rob was saying. It's pretty scary thinking people sending you laptops, then getting provisioned, and oh my God, right? Like, if the laptop is your place of defense, right? Like, if you breach that, if you have on your network somebody else's laptop that is active and they think it's yours, they can get keys to the kingdom. So
That's And Vishal, that's actually, but Rob, that what made me think about as a CIO, you're running a business within a business, and what business would do that, right? When somebody
Yeah.
delivers a bunch of those devices, if you're CEO of the company, you'd look at it and you'd say, no, we're not plugging those into the network. Where did they come from? Give me some paperwork,
Yeah, that's right, right? Like
right?
if you knew the MAC addresses, then you're like, no, I can't install a certificate because these MAC addresses are not in my inventory of things to go. So we know how to avoid it, but I mean, I feel really bad for the person who did get them on and all the havoc that would have created. But coming back to the question that you asked, so I think cloud, if you ask any CIO, including for us, is perhaps the fastest growing part. Other than AI's budgets are still not as significant across the board. In some companies they are, but not across the board. But cloud, I would be willing to bet, is probably the single biggest line item, and probably the one that has single biggest growth, because we all decided data is critical. We want to give great experience to our customers, and data center is not the way to do it, right? And so a lot of the um, workloads not only migrated to the cloud, but you kept on, because the data kept on growing 30, 40, 80% a year. A lot of new workloads started coming into the cloud as well, with the result that, um, not just at Lexmark, even when I was at Unisys or even at Semantic, we actually had significant surprises from just, because in a decentralized environment, a lot of people are creating apps. There's data going exponentially. And so it becomes very, very hard to budget for the cloud if you're not careful, right? It can actually create a number of nasty surprises. And so I think one of the ways the cloud costs can also go over is what happens is the people, you have churn, right? So there are people who are creating these cloud instances, they're creating new infrastructure, spinning up new virtual machines. Now those people leave the company. Who's going to bring that down? So what I see in many companies is there is good discipline that people put in around, hey, let's make sure that when you're bringing it up, it's reserved instance and not a spot instance. They'll do things like making sure it's right sized. But there is no good mechanism of actually bringing it down when people leave, because when people leave, their laptop is easy to get deprovisioned. It, People are not tracking because they don't have the inventory of every single thing this person did. And now they own a bunch of cloud resources and they're gone and nobody else is like thinking about it anymore. So it's both a security hassle and a cost hassle, right? It's a security hassle because nobody's upgrading those to the right versions. And it's a cost hassle because in the cloud, tick, 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 every single time. The good thing is things can come up very fast, but they also build very fast when they're up with every possible permutation and combination. And so I think this kind of goes back to another area. We've discussed so many areas that having this correct inventory helps. This is yet another area where if you knew not only for your physical assets, but your logical assets that are spun in the cloud, if I can maintain the context of who owns them and then can link it to getting them deprovisioned when that person is either changing roles or leaving the company, you can save a lot of money. So we have, in the recent times, implemented something like that, and certainly we saw significant savings. But these are hard problems that you cannot solve unless you link all of this information up.
Yeah. Vishal, I can relate to that one on so many levels with the cloud, the power apps and different things that your team can do now with all of these different cloud services, and being able to harness all of that is definitely a challenge. So I
Yeah.
agree. They leave and then you don't know what's up and running.
Yeah. And what both of you are working on, we said it earlier in our session here today, is that what are the specific things we can do to improve the data quality, which drives all of this performance we're aiming for? And process automation is a really, because even the steps that you just laid out, Michelle, in terms of what you're doing, uh, you know, as a discipline now in organizations, when you're transforming the business and building and changing, there's this test now of saying, can I automate this? Because I think, and AI has had a lot to do with generative AI and the different AI technologies. You can say, and then there's automation tools that are out there as well. And Umitsa goes a long way in automating so many of these processes to drive this. And that has to become a discipline, in in your transformation approach as a company, because you don't want to miss those important opportunities. And that drives better data quality and what we're trying to do. And back to the topic of just financial management, Amy, as you continue, to work on driving these new platforms into the business, how are you seeing benefits in working with your finance executives, and as they come to you and say, Amy, we want to see better numbers out of IT, or we can't see this or can't see that?
Well, I actually have a very current example because we did just launch the ITAM a couple of weeks ago. I thought somebody was pranking me at first on the day that I actually had my IT operations manager walk me through our new dashboards and visibility into everything that's going on. We got an email from finance. Hey, are you guys tracking how many laptops that you have? The timing was so perfect. I actually thought they were joking with me. I'm like, well, actually, we do. But so as far as the working with finance, one is we've now given we can answer their question immediately without having to go look at what we have at all of our different locations. And now we're in the process of looking at what is our endpoint refresh strategy, right? What's coming to end of life, so we can forecast it for this coming year. And really, what do we also have at one location that still has some life left in it that we can reallocate to another location? So that's really where we're getting with our finance team now, is now that we understand what we have, we can repurpose or shift where things are, and then come in this budget planning season, which is coming up, to really look at what we're going to be needing this coming year.
Yeah, exactly. And Rob, in keeping this finance discussion as CEO of a company, if somebody comes to you to make a big decision or investment decision, what do you like to see? I always said, in order to make an informed decision, I have to be well informed, right?
Yeah.
If you can't see it, you can't management. And that's what you're helping your clients do, so that they know where to make better investments in technology, is to see the assets, right?
Yeah, look, I don't think it's a surprise to anyone. I mean, financial accountability is a critical component of running any business, and that's not just for a CEO and a CFO. I think that's across the board. I think when you look at Amy and Vishal, if they didn't have a level of financial accountability in how they operate the businesses that they're responsible for, they wouldn't be in the positions they're in. So I think if you don't have the data and you don't have the trust in the way that data is articulating the position of the company, then you can't achieve that. And I if I've heard one clear thing in being out over the past year in the asset management environment, it's that every piece of data that we collect, every piece of automation and workflow that we generate, if it can't support the fundamental pillars of an organization, and financial accountability is one of them, right? Audit readiness is the second, regulatory compliance is the third, continuity of operations and security oversight. And I would add a growing pillar that's getting added into that group is the employee experience. And if you cannot collect information and support those pillars of the business, then you really should be relooking at the technology you're investing in. Because if it's not falling in one of those areas, then I don't know how you don't look at it and identify it as a wasted cost. It's got to be moving the business forward and improving that business. And I think every day the employees at UMNITSA, they challenge each other to figure out, how do we get our technology to add value into one of those pillars? And thankfully we're hearing that from Amy and other customers. And I think the thought leaders like Vishal, continue to go out and say that these are the things you have to be thinking about. And that's why I think this call today was so important. I think it's covering a critically important topic that addresses so many companies.
All right. Fabulous. What a great discussion today. Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you.
This has been valuable.
Thank you.
Thank you, Phil.
All right. Cheers.
Thanks so much, Phil. Now, before we go, a quick note to our audience. If so much of this resonated with you, like it did with us here at CIO, you can find out more through that resources list on your player. So do take advantage. You can download a copy of the IDC Spotlight report that was the basis of today's discussion and really dive into that data for the insights and expertise that we had offered today. So a big thanks to our moderator, Phil Newmoyer, our panelists, Amy Doucette with MVM, Vishal Gupta with Lexmark International, and Rob Potter, CEO of UNITSA, our sponsor. Thanks everyone so much for your expertise and insight. And with that, for CIO and UNITSA, Jim Malone saying thanks everyone for tuning in.